Good morning, friends. I'm delighted to share with you some of the big ideas, insights, and experiences of international leaders on higher education on the India Power Talk. Salah Kandri, the global head of education in his World Economic Forum in May 2020, observed that the pandemic has not just shattered economies around the world, but has also battered the entire education system in the developing and the developed countries. Some 1.5 billion students, close to 90% of all primary, secondary, and tertiary learners in the world, are no longer able to physically go to school. The impact has been dramatic and transformative as educators scramble to put in place workable short term solutions for remote teaching and learning, particularly in the emerging markets, where students and schools face additional challenges related to financing and available infrastructure. However, I would think this is a lifetime opportunity for global educationists to look positively about the entire education system, be it collaborations or rethinking the pedagogy. There is a great opportunity to develop new forms of personalized education and to innovate in students' evaluation, including online, beyond the mere conventional assessments. It is a great opportunity to create flexible and unified forms of lifelong learning beyond initial education to upskill and reskill workers for the digital economy. Collaborations between universities, academicians, professors must happen to shape our future of the planet and people. There is, I guess, just no choice. So here is what our speakers, Franz Kolb, Robert Adi, Joe Nesbitt, and Ron Gunnell had to say on the education and the future of education. Please have a look at that. Thank you.
And I believe education is the biggest leveler. Uh, and education is the worst hit sector in the coronavirus. In mid-April, UNESCO reported around 192 countries had closed all schools and universities, affecting more than 90% of the world's learners, students community, almost 1.6 billion children and young people. One of the most important drivers in human capital investment continues to be largely closed. And that's so sad. With largest young population in India, we need large scale investments and also curriculums, innovative curriculums from the developed economies. We will be soon allowing foreign universities to set up campuses in India. How do you really see this change?
You know, a thriving post COVID world in India, with all the changes I've spoken about today, will not be sustainable without the investment and focused priorities in the education of India's rising generation. The new normal must include new and innovative efforts to connect higher education and its students, professors, and leaders with higher educational institutions outside of India on a global stage. I think creating this kind of paradigm shift in how students experience education in a synergistic partnership with universities outside of India will give India students an incredible head start in the business marketplace, thus ensuring a better educated workforce.
As human knowledge advances and grows increasingly in a geometric fashion, the level of education necessary to thrive and survive in today's world is that much greater. And it's not enough to say, I'm a distinguished, successful student, an academic, an educated individual in India, or in the United States, or for that matter, in China, or in Germany, or in the UK, or Canada, or Brazil, or any place else. The reality is that as the world becomes more economically interdependent, as technology makes it truly a smaller world, the need for us to be educated, not just more educated, but more globally educated, is that much more important. And the last thing I would say there is that I think for India in particular, there is opportunity in global education because of the the youth of the population as a demographic matter, and the consequent benefits and power of or impact of more education and more global education in terms of job opportunities, in terms of networking opportunities, and really in terms of being meaningfully connected with the world.
I have been working on foreign collaborations for over 2 decades now. But Joe, honestly, I'm really curious to know How do the global universities collaborate? And who drives these initiatives? And what are the considerations for these collaborations?
In my experience, they're typically driven from the top. They're typically driven with very strong strategic leadership. So it will be coming from the vice chancellor or the president, and the networks tick a lot of boxes for universities and institutions like that. So they'll tick an education box, they'll tick an internationalization box, they'll tick the research box, and it raises the profile of the institutions.
A second phenomenon in terms of where education is going, I think that's important, is this notion of stackable credentials. Stackable credentials. So traditionally, if you wanted to get a master's degree, or I wanted to get a master's degree, we would go and we would start on day one, and then we would progressively march through the coursework and earn our credits. And when we had enough credits, we would earn our master's degree. Increasingly, the way knowledge and education looks is one acquires a certain educational credential, could be a certificate. It could even be just a single course or an executive education program. If that program is valuable, opens the pathway to additional learning opportunities, I might then do another course that builds on that initial course, right? Now I've taken 2 courses or 2 certificates. Now we go beyond that and do a further one. So we are at the moment, Texas A&M, my university, is talking about a variety of programs in India in terms of educational programs, not just for lawyers, I should say, but also for engineers and for physicians and for folks in finance and computer science whose work intersects with law and regulation and the like. But the way we are structuring it is, we are structuring it in the form of certificates that someone earns 1 certificate, and if they finish that certificate and they are done, they have earned their certificate. But they can choose then to earn a 2nd certificate and to stack that certificate on top of the first one. And if they then earn a 3rd certificate, collectively those certificates will add up to a master's degree. So that's a second important phenomenon, I think, that is changing the nature of education globally, and even in our individual countries.
Having worked in universities, innovations like online learning and digital technologies have been very, very slow to implement. And all of these technologies have been catapulted forward at a really breakneck speed. Universities have had to implement them just to deal with the current crisis. So it's been one of those fantastic sort of, business things where you see things happen because of a crisis. I think the current situation has improved everybody's collective understanding and confidence in online learning. And I think institutional capacities have increased because they've had to. The policy environment has improved. And I think there's obviously going to be much reflection as we go forward on the future. Are students going to want to do everything online? Will they be happy to go abroad? So it's about supply and demand, I think, is the point there. We also have to really, I think for me, and somebody that's worked around quality in education, we need to really be thinking about learning outcomes versus the learning experience. So a lot of people just think we can bundle a bunch of lectures onto Zoom. That will not cut it in the future. That there really needs to be some kind of quite key work done around outcomes. So yeah, not about digitizing the learning content. We've got to think about the student support, the student engagement, student access, IT underpinning it all. I don't think face-to-face will be replaced. I'm going to say that now because I've spoken to a lot of parents and a lot of students who are very keen still to have that face-to-face experience. And there will always be those students that can afford that sort of very high cost, high return kind of educational experience.
The desire for education is in India, 3 exclamation marks. So if that's the case, so the demand is there.
Yes.
And since the demand is there, universities from everywhere should come over there and I think it would be a very, very fertile ground. And we have, by the way, a number of universities in Utah that I'm sure are collaborating. Usually it's professors that are collaborating and research and various things.
Yes.
You know, skill-based education that I believe incredibly important in India, that will help in rural communities, people that just don't have access to university. And I think that should be formalized. And maybe it is, but that this apprenticeship system should be formalized in India, and there are some very interesting models that we could be happy to.
I see a huge opportunity where there are a lot of MNCs operating in India. There are large educational institutions in India, and there are large number of students who are students or children who are dropouts. Now, if some form of incentive programs are evolved by the companies operating in India, if in collaboration with some technical institutions, if they can come in India, and if they can take up imparting this technical education or vocational education or skill-based education, it will improve not only the workforce for the companies operating in India, but also it will really help meet the requirement of the students community who are in large number.